Hello again, Sandwich. I'm Greg Anderson. Welcome back into another discussion of learning about our candidates, people you will be voting for, hopefully, yes, on Thursday, May 5th. We have several races that are on the ballot this year, and one of them is the Board of Selectmen. We have invited all of the candidates to this studio for a discussion. And today we are talking about that four-way race, of which there are two seats that are up for grabs, if you will. And today we are talking with Kerry Ames. Hello, Kerry.
Hi there.
It is nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I think it's been since your first run that you and I were last talking.
I think in between, yes.
In between.
A couple of them, yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think everybody knows who you are, and I saw a beautiful Bridget sitting out there. So, we know about you, but tell us a little something that is kind of motivating you to be on the Board of Selectmen, something about you personally.
So first, I think it's great that it's actually a contested race. I think that the more people involved, the more you're going to hear about people. I'm glad that there's no walk-ons this year in any of the races. I think that people do know me. I am a vice president of a construction company, a crane company. So I'm used to working with multiple budgets and contingency planning. I think what motivated me to run for selectman is that when David Sampson decided not to run for re-election, I thought this is a new challenge for me. I'm comfortable on the school committee. I know what I'm doing here. But this is another way for me to continue to serve the town, but also challenge me in new ways.
Interesting. Okay. So from the information that you sent me, Kerry, you have really three key issues, and I'm sure there are others. Affordable housing, affordable, not the capital A, subsidy,
correct,
necessarily, but it's kind of the more reasonably priced affordable housing. The other is disability services.
Yes.
And then the third is tax dollar spending.
Correct.
Let's talk about tax dollar spending because many candidates are talking about spending and how they're going to do a better job than the current board. Stop wasteful spending. The town spends too much. There's such a discussion about that. It's always a hot topic. If you won election and you got that seat, what is your unique approach to spending? And let's just take the public works, the bond issue. The bond issue.
Okay. So I think that there are real issues. Obviously, people know me on the school committee. I nickel and dime the budget, right? I am one that I get into the weeds, and I want to know why that money is being spent. And if you can convince me of the reason why, then I'm all for it. The case of the bond issue, I'm all for it because we need to upkeep our roads. If you don't do regular maintenance on the roads, what happens? Now you need to do a whole grand overhaul. We've seen that with town buildings as well, right? The library, we kept kicking the can down the road, and now all of a sudden, it's a bigger project than what we should have done in the beginning. Okay. So that's where I usually take my mindset of, is where is this money being spent and why? And there are some projects, I can go back to school, where I have said, no, like this doesn't make sense to me. Hiring new positions, tell me why. And bring it up during the budget discussion, don't bring it up afterwards. Okay. We need to spend money on quality people. We need to have town employees, but we want to make sure that if any new hire comes on, why are they coming on? Because that's our tax dollars, and we want to make sure we're getting the right person for the right amount of money.
Okay. When we look at putting money into infrastructure, you need to believe that the back end of it, the Public Works Department, is kind of organized and ready to go because
Correct.
You're investing in it. How do you feel about that? Cash is handed over and now let's get to work. How do you feel about the back end of the Public Works Department to be able to either prioritize or manage all of that?
I think they do a good job.
Okay.
I think that they do an excellent job at prioritizing. They actually have that new system now where you can report the roads, right? You can report your potholes so that they are aware of it, so that if they're not driving down that road, they might not be aware of it. I think that they have a great long-term plan, and that's what this bond is all about, is that long-term plan. And what's nice about the bond is that by doing this, you're holding them accountable, right? So you say, we're giving you this money, and now we have the accountability feature there as well. Because they can't now go and unprioritize things.
Right. Golf course.
Yes.
Talk to me about your thoughts on that spending.
Same thing here, right?
Okay.
We've invested a lot of money on that golf course. That golf course has generated revenue for itself and for this town. If you don't keep up the 20-odd year system, it's not going to work, and you're not going to have a golf course that people don't want to come to play.
Okay. All right. Schools.
Yes.
Let me ask you about this. As a school board member, you are in charge of that allocation.
Correct.
Of the largest portion of our town budget. It's
Yes.
schools. So you're in a position to say, let's divvy or let's make those decisions about that. But on the Board of Selectmen, you don't have that narrow decision making on what goes where as much.
For the schools.
For the schools.
Correct.
Exactly.
There's a reason for that, right? That's by law. That's by,
Right.
It's that there's a reason why the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee have oversight, but can't get into the weeds and can't tell you exactly what to do there.
How is that going to be for you just personally? I mean, you've been sitting on the school board and you've been making those decisions. Now you're going to be saying, I can vote on the lump, but I can't necessarily go into the detail.
Well, I'm going to disagree a little bit here. So when the school board comes against annually and presents their budget, we look at that budget and you say, wait a minute, you don't need this percentage increase. Why are you spending this? Same thing with the bond, right? We're saying, wait, why are you spending this much money on this part of the project? And if you can't convince me of that, I don't have to vote for it. So you can't get into, once it's done, then you have to say, then you again have that accountability, right? Okay, you've been spending this money. We want you to report to us how these projects are going.
Yeah. What's the natural progression for you to go from the school committee to the Board of Selectmen? What's that, if we look at it in a career step?
Okay.
What is it that helps you transfer from the school committee to the Board of Selectmen?
So with the school committee, I've learned how to deal with multiple unions. I've learned how to balance the budgets. I've learned how to communicate better, and also what my purview is, right? As a school committee member, I'm in charge of the superintendent. Board of Selectmen, we're in charge of the town manager.
Yeah.
We're not really in charge of the police chief.
Right.
And I know that hierarchy. I know where the boundaries lay. My progression from school committee to selectmen is I've learned municipal budgeting on a smaller scale. Even though it's a larger part of the budget,
Sure.
it's one budget versus now I will be undertaking multiple budgets. So I've taken what I'm learning as a foundation and will be applying it as a selectman.
Got it. Let's talk about affordable housing. Home prices are through the roof.
Yes.
Great seller's market right now, particularly in Sandwich. How does affordability work into that? Your focus on affordability, how does it factor into that?
I feel tremendously lucky that I have been established in this town. I could not afford to move into this town today. And I have a very well-paying job. My husband is, well paid. We are savers, we are fiscally responsible, and we joke, if we sold our house today to move someplace else, we could never afford to move back to Sandwich. And that's sad. I want my daughter to be able to buy a house in Sandwich when she's older. I want my friends, I want to say this correctly, I'm not a townie, but I'm a townie by heart.
Yeah.
My kids, being a townie means you have respect for your town, you want to live in the town, you want to work in the town and buy and sell in the town, right? I remember when we first were married, we lived in the development across from Lambert's, the old Kennedy chicken house.
Yes.
Back in the day, right?
Yes.
And I would never drive. I walked to the post office, I walked to the Chinese, I walked to this grocery store. I lived in this town and I shopped in this town. I want our families to be able to do that. I want our families that work at Stop and Shop to live in town. I want them to be able to afford to. I want someone who is a police officer to live in this town, because if you know your neighborhood police officer, you're going to have respect and you know who to go to. I want you to be able to go to your guy that works for the DPW and say, hey, that's my neighbor and he knows he's going to take care of our town better because he lives and breathes in this town.
Right.
You're going to go to the restaurants. So I need to learn how I can help in that way. by working with the housing authorities and local developers. But I think it's possible. And it's not against the subsidized housing. Like, that's important too.
Yeah.
But the middle class gets lost in this.
So what's
market.
If we were sitting having a cup of coffee at Marshland and just talking about this, and I share that feeling of like, yeah, it's very expensive to buy a house here in Sandwich. Therefore,
Or to rent, not to interrupt you, or to rent,
Or to
right?
rent.
Because if I have a rental property, I need to make that mortgage.
Yeah.
So even renting in this town is difficult.
So without all of the education that you're referring to, where you need to learn more, and I think that's a great thing to say. Where do you start? Like, what are you thinking as it relates to where you can go to help make it more affordable? It seems like a lofty goal.
Right.
So how do you go from lofty to, I think I can help?
So, like I said, I'm a vice president of a crane and rigging company, right? So I have contacts in the construction world. I know developers, I know general contractors. So I can talk to them and say, listen, how does this builder in town, right? How does Leon Pincinel, who makes beautiful houses, how does he develop this, if he has this idea? What does he need to do to make it, so he's successful, but we also have success for our families? Working with the housing authority, working with the other board members who have institutional knowledge. Those would be my resources.
Okay, all right. Disability services. You note that the volunteers on the Commission on Disabilities are not getting the recognition that they deserve.
They're not.
How so? Tell me about that.
You can't even find the information on the website. I look at the Council on Aging, and it's a vibrant website. And they're, in the disability services, they're doing a good job, but nobody knows they're not promoted enough. They need better outreach. And I think I've proven that I can do that on a smaller scale with special education. Everyone's aware, or not everyone, but I have a severely disabled child. As she gets older, there's more than Special Olympics. There's more than Best Buddies. And I think that the Disabilities Commission, they have a great footprint, but they're not, as someone with a child with disabilities, I don't exactly know what happens when she gets older. And I think that not just intellectual disabilities, but physical disabilities as well, that they are a great resource, but I don't think that they are promoted enough. I don't think people know who they are, and I would like to help with that.
When you look at the hot topics, every election cycle, we see these hot topics that are coming up. What do you think are the, to the average person sitting out there, what are the big hot topics out there that they are concerned about that you can tie into and address and speak to?
Are you talking about the warrant articles, or are you talking about just in general?
In general. I live in town and there's an election.
Right.
What do you think are the most significant issues that are facing this town?
I think the upcoming recession that we will be facing within the next couple of years is something that we need to be planning for. I'm doing that in my own business. We are looking at, because business construction is booming right now, right? But we are looking at the future and what's going to happen. And I think that people with this inflation are really concerned about what's going to happen when the fall comes. So I think that's something that we're all worried about and that we need to be strategically planning for in this town at every level. That's probably the hottest topic that I can think of. The other one would be maintaining our infrastructure and the wastewater issue that will be coming, right? We know we have the WIF, we know we have a plan, but we have to get moving on that because wastewater is a really huge issue.
Okay. You have a husband that's a firefighter.
Yes.
There may be conflict of interest dynamics. How do you speak to the conflict of interest? And we're just limited on time, but can you talk about
so very
that?
quickly, that was one of the reasons why I almost didn't run.
Okay.
But then I thought, if I take that mindset, I never should have been on the school committee because I had 2 children in the schools and I was voting on field trips. I was voting on special education issues. I was negotiating with the ESPs. And what happened was I got to bring my knowledge of when they came to us with the ESPs and said, we are going to do a tiered system for pay. And the other committee members had no idea what that meant. And I said, well, you have ESPs that are, wiping butts, and ESPs that are checking out books. There should be a pay differential. However, in this case, I would bring that knowledge, right? So when they come to you and they say, the fire department overtime, why is it so high? And I can say, because of COVID, because of the pandemic, because Chief Burke had to change how he did things. However, I would never participate in a grievance, right? Just like if my daughter's teacher, my daughter's teacher, let's say she had a grievance against the principal.
Sure.
As
an example.
I would never participate, right? Because that's my daughter's teacher, and I have a relationship with that teacher.
Right.
Now, if the ESPs as a whole came for a grievance that had nothing to do with my child, then I can participate. And I look at it the same way with the fire department. Okay. If we took that mindset, I could never vote on or question the special education budget, right? Because my child receives significant services.
Right.
But because I have that knowledge, I can explain that budget to somebody. Same thing on the fire department. I would not negotiate the contract because that is a clear conflict of interest. My husband would participate. I would not participate in the grievance if it was with my husband, but the fire department as a whole. And I would check with town clerk and town council, and I would definitely, as I've always have, disclosed that.
Okay. Give me. Why should I vote for Kerry Ames?
The simple answer is I love this town, and I work hard for this town on the school committee, and I will work very hard for this town on the select board. I am accessible. I have always answered people. I have always made myself aware, and I think I've proven that I will take your tax dollars as if they were my own, because that's how I approach this very important responsibility.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Excellent. Nice job. Thank you very much, Kerry Ames, for joining me. Our goal here at Sandwich Community Television is really to bring as much information as we possibly can, stay current on all of the things here at Sandwich Community Television, social media, Facebook. With these guys, they do a terrific job. And of course, with our partners at the Sandwich Enterprise who are helping us with all of this campaign coverage. I'm Greg Anderson. Do not forget to vote on Thursday, May 5th. See you soon.
Thank you.
The views expressed in this program are the views of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the SCTV staff or board of directors.